Relate of our tutorial series. This is Object Orientated Programming and PHP Part 3. So we spoke about our parent class person, and we have spoke about our child class Bobby, and our instance of our parent class Guy, and our instance of our child class Guy too. Now, what we're going to talk about in this video is we've already spoken in the previous video about how when you put the keyword private before a class property, it means that property is only available inside the class, and if you try and call it from outside the class, it returns an error. And if you make it public, it means that property is available anywhere. But I should say that all a property is, it's just a variable which belongs to a class. A class is a collection of variables called properties and a collection of functions called methods. So, for example, this greeting function here, which we've defined, would be known as a method because it's a function which belongs to the parent class person. But I should say that private and public scope also apply to methods. So at the minute, everything's running hunky-dory. Our child Bobby is calling this greeting function inside the parent. That's down here. Echo Guy2, which is an instance of our child Bobby, is calling the greeting method in the parent class, which is here. But if we change this to private, it should return an error because we're then trying to call this greeting method from outside the parent class. So that should return an error. Yeah, because if it's private, it can only be called, if it's a private method, it can only be called from inside the parent. So, one way we can, another thing we can talk about the scope is the scope word protected. Protected means it can't be called in the parent, it can only be called in the child, or it can't be called outside. The only place it can be called is the child, and the way we could access that is the child can override the parent. So if we give Bobby a function, and let's say, for example, if we want to override the greeting function in the parent, we'd have to give Bobby the same method, the exact same name, and then change the definition. So, for example, the way we would do that is we would write public function greeting, and the PHP interpreter right away recognises that there's a method in the parent called greeting and there's a method in the child called greeting, so it recognises that the child wants to override the greeting method in the parent. And then in here we would put return, and what we would return is we return the parent, spell parent now, we return the parent method of greeting. Okay, so that should work, because what should happen is our instance of our child class Bobby Guy2 should call the greeting method inside Bobby. The greeting method inside Bobby is the same name as the greeting method inside the parent, so it should say to the parent, I'm going to override you, and it should return the parent greeting method, so it should return what's inside the parent greeting method. So let's save that, and this should no longer be an error, which is not. So that's a little bit about, the protected scope. So private means it can only be, if you make a method private in the parent class, that means it can only be called from inside the parent class. Same with property, if you make it private inside the parent class, it means it can only be called from inside the parent class. If you make it public method or property, it means it can be called from anywhere. But if you make it a protected method or property, it means it can only be called from inside the child, which it is. And it's just a little bit about overriding. Basically, I mean, we could change this greeting. We could just put return hello world, because the child at the minute, the child can override the parent, and the child can override the parent because we're creating a method of the same name greeting inside the child, which already exists inside the parent. Yep, so it's overridden that method. So what about if we don't want the child to be able to override a method? Say we wanted to protect a method against getting overridden by the child. We just use the keyword final. So if we put final there, what that does is it's return an error, yet fatal error cannot override final method in person, which is the parent. So if you put a final keyword on a method or a property inside a class, it means it can't, that class, that method or property cannot be overridden by any child of the class. So another thing we could look at, sort of final thing we could look at, is we can actually call a class. We can call a class without creating an instance of it. For example, if we want to call the greeting method of the Bobby class, comment every other echo out, and we can say echo, and what we want to echo is Bobby, name of the class, double colon, and we should call the function greeting. And so let's do that. Oh yeah, because it's trying to override. So we need to get rid of the final keyword. That should do it. So it's printing out hello world at the bottom here, which is what it should be because we called it statically. It's saying that you shouldn't really call it statically. Under strict standards, you should never really call I've just shown that as an example, but you should never really call a class statically. Classes are designed to be dynamic by nature and are designed, so that they're dynamic by nature, and they're designed so that you don't call them statically. You create instances of them, such as guy2 and guy. But one way you can sort of try and fix this error is by using the keyword static. So if you put static before this function, that should fix that error. Okay, here. Bad example, it's because it's overriding another method which isn't static. So, for example, if we wanted to call something in the parent class, we wouldn't make name static, would we? We'll create another function as an example, another method as an example of this. We'll just quickly check the time, make sure we're not going to run over. So, probably I'll just show you this really quickly. So what we could do is static. So actually we could copy this, and we could put static, and we could call that greeting2, and we could put greeting2 at the end of here, and we could quickly save that and quickly run it. So the static keyword fixes this error of calling things statically. Yep, hello world. So that fixes the error of calling things statically.